Hello and welcome. This is the 21st episode of Effluvium. The time is now 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The date is February 7th, 2023. And our special guest this evening is Dana Sandu of A Nose Knows. And we will be bringing in her shortly with our regular guest panelists, who are Ryan, Perfume Bonfire, and Adam Forciati. And you can follow him on Instagram at spoken_ethers. He is a Fragrantica contributor and writer as well, and I'm happy to have him back with us. So I wanted to take some time to go over, to start things off, with three different creations here. The usual three first impressions. One of which was actually a sample that was sent to me by Anatole Le Breton, because I had recently ordered L'Eau de Mazin, and I've fallen head over heels for that one. He was genuine enough to put in a couple of extra samples, which includes cornalin, which will be one of them. Another one is from a house called Aromas de Salazar, and this is called Fatal Fougere, and we'll be trying that one out as well. And the third one is courtesy of my friend Keith, who goes by the name of Manly Sense. And he sent a few different samples to me, and this is the original 1980 version of the Eau de Toilette, a Wild pour Homme, or Wild pour Homme. So that is the third. But before we get things started, I wanted to take some time out for a moment of silence, because if you are not aware, you should be aware that there are a lot of people on the other side of the globe who are dealing with a great deal of grief and suffering. And I want to take some time for some silence for folks who are in Turkey and Syria. So allow us to give about 30 seconds for that. May all beings be at peace, and may all beings be free from suffering. I'm going to take a look at the chat currently, and I see Mr. Clean. Hello. Glad to have you here. Fernando Soto, welcome. And Perfume Temple, Alex, great to see you. Did Anatole send a sample of Le Girouette? As a matter of fact, that is the other one that he sent to me. And for a future episode, I will include this for my three first impressions. So he did include that as well. Hello, welcome. I'm sure that you are thrilled to tune in this evening. Great to see you. Will, wonderful to see you. I hope that you're enjoying the spoils that were sent to you, the all of the goodies. Okay. Yeah, I know very little about the other one. So let's get things started with the three first impressions. We'll start off with Cornaline from Anatole Le Breton. Generous amount. Okay. And it even includes a little cap. Wonderful. Okay. We'll spray on the right hand here. Not too shabby. There is a waxiness. Oh, okay. This has a lot of alpha, irones, orris. Very orrisy. lipsticky orsy cosmetic. Reminds me of my mother's pocket book when I was a kid, looking for a piece of gum in her pocketbook, and her admonishing me for thumbing through her belongings to find a sweet or a piece of gum. This doesn't smell like the sweets or a piece of gum. This smells like her cosmetics. It smells like mom's pocketbook in a wonderful way. And those are good memories to have. And that's one of my favorite things about perfume and fragrance. The power of scent, how it hits right into the limbic system and sparks up certain memories with immediacy. I'm not sure if this is one that I would feel fits my aesthetic, but it is, it's so lipsticky. This is when people say lipsticky orris, and I can get sort of that idea from other fragrances, but this is totally the smell of a lipstick to me. And really nothing else, at least in the top notes. So that's cornalin. We'll revisit that a little bit later in the stream. Next is this curiously named Fatal Fougere. That's a very powerful and bold name. We'll use the left hand. Ooh, there's a whole lot of green going on from over here. I haven't put my nose near the hand. Okay. I'm not picking up any lavender. Not that lavender must be in a fougere, but that's what I'm so used to, is having a fougere open with lavender and bergamot. There's rules to be broken. There's ways of deconstructing ideas. So I commend anyone for doing that. But rather what I smell is, it's very grassy. It's very much freshly mown grass, lawn, which to me isn't very characteristic of a fougere, but yet again, there's different approaches. And a very oily quality to it. Kind of like the motor oil. Like motor oil, like maybe the lawnmower with the grass. This is a peculiar one. I will have to see what happens with this one a little bit later on. This is a big question mark. A big question mark. I'm a bit incredulous, but that's good. All right. Third, the vintage Whale Pour-Homme. Whale is a perfume house that has some iconic fragrances in its oeuvre, such as Zibelline, Antelope. Those are from the 20s, the 30s. And this was the first, I believe this was the first men's release, or release marketed to men. And I have a resurrected version of this from the 2000s, which is pleasant, but it didn't really resonate with me. Oh. So the top notes have turned just a bit. So what I call sort of like it's sort of like when the citruses, they kind of collapse a little bit over time, but that goes away often with age stuff if it is relatively okay otherwise. Yeah, it's getting better. Oh, that's nice. Very much in the same sort of family of fragrances as Paco Rabanne Pour-Homme, Roger Gallet, L'Homme, geranium, spice, carnation, mossy. It's quite nice. The real question is how much it differs from other offerings from that time. Right now, I feel like it was sort of an also ran, sort of like this house decided, this style of fragrance has proven to be commercially successful. So let's get our version of it out there and see if it will bring us some financial success. And that's very nice. I think out of the three, so far, I'm actually probably most likely to wear this. Not because it's the only one that is clearly marketed to men, as everybody knows that means nothing to me. Because it is proven to be just, in my opinion, one that coalesces. It all kind of comes together. I mean, go figure. It was a designer scent. That was, it had a budget behind. I mean, not that Anatole Breton doesn't have talent, but I just feel like this is the three out of the three. This would be the one that I'd probably be most likely to wear. All right, enough of all of that. Okay, all of these are falling down over here. That's fine. We'll play a little game of dominoes. Let's get back to the chat here, and soon what we will do is we will bring in Ryan, regular guest panelist and good pal of mine. Let's see here. Mishi, wonderful to see you. Scent of the day from Will, Kiehl's Musk on one wrist and Les Indomadables Escale and Haiti on the other. You had a very interesting wooden object in your hand. Yes, I did. You want me to get that again? So it's kind of like DNA. And this is how it starts off. This is my Mr. Rogers moment right now. So it starts off like this, and then you spin. Here we go. There. And then that. Yeah. Cool stuff, right? Forgot the name of what it's called. There's a box that has the name of it, but it sits right over here on my table over here. Okay. And scent of the day, Pure Distance 1. Lovely. Good to see you. And good to see you, Carleo. Okay. Time is now 7:12. We're going to bring in Ryan, and we'll get a little bit of conversation going. And I do see that Adam has joined us as well. So why don't we corral him in as well? Ryan first, because you showed up first. Adam second.
I've been corralled.
You've been corralled.
Kettle fields now.
I have my way with a lasso. Okay.
I picture the guy from the Village People. Anyway.
Yes. Young men, right? Okay. Sorry. Okay. Oh, Manginosis, wonderful to see you. And I'm just so happy to have folks here. We have 25 people who are currently tuned in. Hi, bye, Brian. Wonderful to see you. Scent of the day, Luton's Cannibal. Great. Okay. So how are you two doing?
Doing pretty well. How about yourself?
Not bad, not bad. We're going to have a very exciting conversation, and I do want to bring in Donna very soon. I hope I am pronouncing her name as it should be pronounced. I know that she also goes as Dana, but I feel like I recall, she'll probably correct me either way, that her name is pronounced Donna. So I want to give a proper introduction, because I don't want to have her just sitting there and waiting while we just blather around with no real direction, because we do have a lot of great discussion. So for the folks in the audience, I do want to give a formal introduction. Donna Sandu is a researcher in olfactive anthropology. She is a perfume documentarist, a contextual reviewer, and concept writer. She is a senior contributor for CaFleurBon, has her own YouTube channel, and has made numerous appearances with Sebastian Jara on his channel, The Perfume Guy, which are, I believe, among his best collaborations, and that's how I learned of her and became infatuated. She is an award finalist for the Perfumed Plume 2020 and 2021. Not surprising, and is committed to the Perfumery Code of Ethics. She is also a founder of Nas de Nas, which is the largest Roman-language fragrance community in the world. So, without further ado, I would like to bring in our special guest, Donna. And add to the stream. Hello. Here we go. There we go. Hi.
Everything sounds so pompous and,
No, I did not want
I'm starting to like myself. I'm like, ooh, listen to that. That is me. I wish I could see the comments. Am I seeing the comments? I am seeing the comments. Hi, everyone. And
yeah, there's like different tabs to see. There's one with the comments, but sometimes what I do is when I'm a guest on these, I open sort of like a pop-up window on the other, live version, but that can get complicated. I won't get into that. As long as you can somewhat see the comments, I'll be sharing a lot of them as well. But it's wonderful to have you with us. This is exciting.
It's exciting to be here. It's been a while since our last talk. we were planning for the second always. But I got a little bit intimidated with all this presentation because honestly, that's such a, and I think you guys can relate to this. It's such a second hidden part of what I do or what I am. That part that you want to talk about at Thanksgiving dinner and all of your family and all the aunties, they're kind of like, they love you. So they kind of smile and nod. And they think you're a lunatic, and then you take it too far, and then you realize you are a lunatic, and then you don't talk about perfumery forever. I know everybody here, including your commenters, everybody can relate to that. So I'm not really used to be celebrated for this part of my activity. It's amazing. Thank you for having me. For everybody else, this is not what I do for a living. This is not what I do. Actually, I don't monetize any of my work in this field, and I'm going to detail a little bit of that later. But my day-to-day life is in Silicon Valley. I'm a tech consultant. Very boring to others. I do thought leadership. So basically, I'm a brain for hire. They hire me to make them look smart. And I find the right ways to to do that for my clients, who usually are single persons or very, very small entities before they launch. Startups, visionaries, odd people, the people who are so smart they walk with their head down like this because it's too heavy to carry. So my job usually entails looking at disparate pieces of information and figuring out whether there's any connection between what they have at their disposal. A lot of research. Hi, Fernando. So this proclivity to look into facts and nerd over them is kind of natural. And just like you, Joseph, it's famous YouTuber. I'm your favorite because we fight all the time. That's why.
He's a rascal. He is a rascal.
So yeah, research is part of the business. I love to be able to look at things in depth, and I feel that perfumery is covering such a broad areas of different expertises that there's always some connection to be made. So the latest development in my basically nerding over everything perfumery was that I was invited to do a thought leadership session at Google, where they put a lot of their smart people in a room, and they invited me to come and talk about the perfumery part that I know. So then I found myself in this position of deciding what to pick to talk about. And I think that's hard for everybody who ever tries to talk about perfumery, right? What do you talk about? How you talk about it is a different conversation. Who you talk about it to is a different conversation. But what do you pick? How do you pick your topics, right? How do you pick the subject for your next post, for your next article, for your next video, for your next panel? How do you pick it? I know how you pick it because you asked me. What should we talk? What do you want to talk about? And I welcome that, but it's a very, very tough decision to make, right?
It can be,
particularly if you want to provide some sort of value to whoever's there, and two, enjoy it and be left with the material that you can then repurpose, because you don't want to spend all this time doing all this research, talking about all these subtopics, and then not have anything to show for it or not be able to reuse it. So I discovered that from all my 10,000 hours of research, I put my 10,000 hours in, I was able to condense what I now call the olfacts. Sounds either dirty or like hemorrhoid cream name. Olfactive is olfactive experience. It includes us smelling to others. It includes us intentionally smelling or unintentionally smelling the world around us and developing relationships with it and within it, to each their own, right? The way we can. So it was a phenomenal talk. It had a very odd format because I didn't have slides, which panicked everybody. And I basically walked through what I see to be the landscape of smell with the 5 dimensions that I could find. And as I was talking about stuff, I was kind of drawing on a board, and it ended up looking kind of like a pie with all facts in the middle. And to talk about, the neuroscientific aspect of smell, how we smell and what the brain does. To talk about the mercantile aspect of smell, perfumery, aroma, gastronomy even, like all the stuff that create product out of our ability and need to smell. To talk about the politics of smell. And you and I have talked about the politics of smell before, because it goes from why you gotta be French to why you gotta be white to why you gotta be your jasmine fields when you're not even native to this nation, and to many other different, to racisms, right? I have heard people saying this category smells bad, they're stinky, and develop. Okay, so there's one thing to say this smells bad to my nose, bad compared to my aesthetic, bad compared to what my baseline is, and putting a moralizing aspect to that. They smell bad because they're low life, so there's difference. You can very easily go into this aspect of the politics of smell. So that would be the 3rd slice, right? The 4th, and we haven't even talked about what we wanted to talk about. The 4th slice, I'm going to go fast through this. The 4th was the artistic aspect of smell, right? Perfumery and the way we interpret the creative process. And then the 5th was the social aspect. And it was a shit show, man. Like, because you have to go into religion and ritual. You have to go into you smelling for others, so communicating outwards, and you smelling others, which means you internalize their signals, whatever that means. No, pheromones do not exist. Do not listen to the big influencers who say pheromones sell.
Dana actually did
pheromone perfumery.
I actually did a whole video where I highlighted the falsehood of that. One of the various falsehoods and misinformation within the fragrance realm
anybody who's a serious person or has any sort of scientifically inclined, data inclined brain, or is a seeker of truth, will accept when you tell them, hey, don't associate in this direction. Like, it's not, and then they don't. And then you realize that now you know something new about them. But that was, I don't know who you're referring to, but I know exactly who I'm referring to, because he was presenting this new blah, blah, blah line with makes you sexy for everybody, including the dead people. The table is going to hump you. You're going to be so sexy. It's going to be, then you go there and you're like, that's a crock of shit. Sorry. If any of you are sensitive to this kind of wording, I don't blush in English because it's not my native. So, but anyway, I went there and I commented and I said, you shouldn't. I mean, people are not dumb anymore. They research, they look, they're educating themselves. The fragcoms are very active. They're correcting each other. They're searching, actively searching information. There's been so much on everything under the sun regarding this subject. So it's kind of dangerous to support and promote a company that's blatantly lying. Right. Just because they can lie, and people, based on placebo or whatever, think these affirmations become true. And I was shut down, of course. And then somebody else who was in the comments went straight to Luca Turin and said, "Hey, what do you think about this bozo? You know, or about this marketing talk, you know, presented by this big influencer." And Turin was Turin and shut it down in like exactly 7 words or something. It was brilliant. And I was like, but there's a circus out there. Olfex is in the middle of it as far as I'm concerned. And there's so much to cover that there's always something to cover. And I sucked the air out of this room. I am so sorry.
No, don't apologize at all, because you're priming us here, because there's so much to talk about when it comes to this. And you're mentioning the sense association and association with whole cultures, whole societies, and it kind of reminds me of TikTok being the thing that it is, and that there are people who choose to try different foods from different cultures and ethnicities, and then proceed to go on about how disgusted and gross it is to them, and not understanding that we are raised in societies where we have a certain certain assortment of food that are part of our culture, and it's all relative, and what may not be comfortable to your palate at that certain time and place does not necessarily mean that the food is inherently bad. And it is, the way that message kind of conveys, it's sort of like this, looking at this food from other countries, from other cultures, as sort of inferior. It gives that kind of message, like, how in the world can these people, these primitive people, enjoy something that is so unsavory and so unsatisfying to my palate? And I see some correlations between that and also scent too. The reactions to fragrance as well. And I think that is a very interesting, topic to explore in itself. Guys, you two over there, what do you guys have to say about all of this? Let's hear from you. It's your turn. We'll start with Ryan. Ryan just took himself off of mute, so.
Well, I mean, that's a hell of a question. I mean, we've just covered like 1,000 different topics. Which one are we starting with?
I think that was the point. Pick one.
Yeah.
Pick one that tickles your fancy right now.
So I mean, I think, we talk, nothing exists in a vacuum. Nothing comes from nothing. And so it's very interesting to talk about something like perfume, or with any work of art or any language or any culture, where you have this very complex socio-political dynamic around it, and also a very complex history around it. And it's very interesting to talk in a space like this, where people are very attached, have very strong opinions to experiences of beauty or encounters with beauty, and then find the difficult, heavy work of weighing that experience of beauty alongside all the other infinite ethical and philosophical and and artistic considerations that kind of go with that sort of encounter. Because I don't know. It's very tricky to bring up these kind of conversations in a way that doesn't like set people off, because people always feel like they have something personally invested in it. Mm-hmm. I love this thing. How dare you attack this thing, or this brand that is associated with this thing? So I've attached myself to this experience with this perfume that I love and I wear all the time, and it fills me with such joy, and I have therefore put a personal stake of my identity in this. So when you come and say, okay, well, I think this brand is misrepresenting something and is perhaps not the most, benevolent actor in this space for a variety of reasons. We could come at it from, the brands that have done some fairly bad taste, cultural appropriation, or various various marketing stunts that were pretty, in my opinion, ethically dubious, or, just misrepresenting the contents of a perfume, or
clueless. Sometimes they're clueless.
Sometimes they're clueless.
Naivete, like not even realizing the kind of impact.
Right, but not have to wonder is a privilege.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's a privilege in itself.
It's built on not ever having to worry, not ever been corrected, not ever caring enough to accommodate a what if. So it's, even if the intention is not wrong, the effects are, and the intention is not all that matters. Sometimes. Rachel is actually, I'm looking at the comments, and
this is an excellent comment here. I'm not sure if this is the same one, but she is on a roll here. In the West, our history of deprivileging olfaction as a valid way of collecting knowledge, combined with colonial racism that equates clean with no smell, we've destroyed olfaction in our sensoria.
Yes. And if I may add to what she just said, she also had a comment earlier talking about how we suffer from Cartesian epistemology in the West, which basically means we create dichotomies where, are you a Jennifer camp or an Angelina camp? It goes straight to the point, and it feeds right into this tendency of creating rifts where they don't necessarily exist, with the option of no smell being so sanitized that it doesn't really exist. Even if you look at the way some of these platforms are conceived, right? You go like this, or you go like this. This means nothing. Nobody's looking like this. Nobody bothers for this, right? We have no concept of spectrum because it's easier to go yes or no. In perfumery, it's even easier to do that. And referring to what Ryan just mentioned, how emotional we get about stuff. It's all natural. It's neurosciences. We all know that I'll try again. The smell centers are like this, with the memory centers, which in turns on this end are just as intercalated with the emotion processing centers, right? You can't smell something without feeling emotion, and vice versa. So it goes straight into this feelings of stuff, which makes us usually want to justify whatever it is that we're associating those feelings with, which in turns creates or enforces this idea that no smell is a danger zone. Now, there's a meta to that, because at some point, either Protestant work culture or the notion of sanitizing the soul, purity of the body, and all that crap, we did start moralizing lack of smell. Right? We started moralizing cleanliness from here to God, or whatever they say. I don't know, whatever.
Cleanliness is next to godliness.
Thank you. Wash your feet. Nobody says wash your mouth or wash your ass, but we wash our feet because they're important, and we wash our hands and we wash our face, and that's it. It's good enough. But cleanliness, right? And all that stuff. So there are layers upon layers upon layers of I can't call it meaning, of intention connected to trigger, that this is a very messy business. I can kind of understand how we got to the point we are. And I was going to ask you all, I'd like to hear what the guys think about this, because one of the things I put on my interest points for today was fragcom sentiment, not in users, but in influencers. How do you influencers feel about what's happening in perfumery and the back end of analyzing it nowadays? How do you feel about how things are going?
I feel like there is very little in the way of analysis at all, actually. There seems to be, in this age, an abbreviating of things, and things are just getting compressed more and more and more. So there doesn't seem to be as much playfulness with it. You know, I mean, some people might argue otherwise, but it just seems as though there is this means to an end, you know, whether it is to be monetized, to create more partnerships, to grow as a brand, to grow, you know, without taking some, you know, going outside of the box and actually really exploring fragrance with an open mind. You know, like take, for example, just like my 3 impressions, like I try to come into it with just the first things that come to mind. I don't try to concern myself too much when I do those. Like, you know, I did mention Oris in one of them, but to concern myself less with the already existing information that's out there and just come into it, you know, just with my own observations. So I don't see as much of that. I see people relying so much on like a notes breakdown and an ad copy and a performance parameters. It's all very much all functional and all results driven. Ryan, Adam, we'll have you chime in since Ryan already chimed in earlier. How about yourself?
And also, I suspect that you might have looked to me because you saw that I unmuted myself, and I feel like that's the new buzzer. If we were in a game show right now,
that's how I choose.
I read that one. I would say that to piggyback off of your idea that things are becoming a little bit more abbreviated in the content sphere about any given topic doesn't have to be fragrance. My theory is that part of the reason for that, at least, revolves around the fact that there's just simply so much content now. Not that there wasn't a lot of it before. I mean, you know, we always go back to like the dawn of the internet and the popularity of message boards and websites, et cetera, as a sticking point for when all this content came into being and about any topic whatsoever. And that's true. And I don't want to minimize the, you know, volumes upon volumes of books that existed before the internet did. Putting that aside, though, now there is infinitely more with the internet. And the problem is that there used to be gatekeepers. I say that with a little bit of tongue planted in cheek, but ultimately, you know, gatekeepers in terms of editors at Vanity Fair magazine who published the fragrance reviews, which is probably one of the few places you could go to read about. Well, not that fragrance reviewing as such was quite as prevalent as it is now, but that's part of what I'm saying, I guess, is just that there were so few places to read about this specific hobby, as well as many other, you know, relatively niche hobbies, that where they did exist, you had somebody curating it and collecting it. And the limitation of that is obviously that, you know, you are limited to experiencing only the content that is gatekept, that is curated, and that is published. And somebody has to make a decision about what is published and where it is published and when it's published. Whereas now, you know, anybody who musters up enough effort to jot down some notes and to form those notes into a cogent thought and then publish that thought on any number of free mediums, they are the gatekeepers. Now we are our own gatekeepers, and that is difficult because now we don't have any excuse to find content, and yet finding stuff that we really connect with at a deeply intellectual basis or deeply emotional basis or a combination therein is inherently more difficult because there's just so much of it. You can find channels and stuff, but that doesn't always help you.
I would argue that there is no gate anymore.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think that's a much more succinct way to put it. Thank you.
The dam is gone. The flood is coming. It brings shit like any big river does. There's no gatekeeping anymore.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think so. This is something I think about a lot because some of my background is in thinking about the rise of media and how that has transformed human thought over the years, and technology and how that shapes human thought and experience. And one thing we've seen, and I'm, you know, I'll put my stake in the ground. I think we've effectively seen in the last decade the death of what we would call mainstream culture in the effective way. And it's currently on hospice care. I don't believe that there is right now a true mainstream, and I think it's only going to continue to fragment with the proliferation of platforms we have now. I think if you start to really talk to people, it becomes very clear that we all inhabit phantom virtual cultures that sometimes overlap, but there is now like no normative stream of information that people are partaking in. And that's changed. So I think about a lot, we all think about perfume from different lenses a lot of the time. I think a lot of it in terms of economics and the ethics of luxury goods, because it's been a luxury product predominantly in the Western world since the rise of perfume began, ages ago, with the monks producing, eau de cologne style fragrances for royalty and all that stuff. It's very entangled up with the ethics of wealth and money and society. And I always think about it in that perspective. But we have this place where that has actually trickled into the noise of the internet. I came up with the internet in the age of like early internet, where it was like Usenet groups and blogs, and it felt very personal. And that was the dream of the utopian internet, where everybody was going to build like Wikipedia, which for me is like the ideal of what a communal driven good could be. Wikipedia is like a wonder of the world that the ancients would drool over. It's greater than the Library of Alexandria. It's this monolithic source of knowledge that we've all contributed to.
But it's permanent. That's the difference between Wikipedia and everything else. It has permanence because a newsletter goes, right? A blog gets out of time, touch, whatever. Wikipedia is permanence. It's like one of those like mycology colonies, the mega mushroom fungi, 6,000 years old, covering I don't know how many thousands of hectares, biggest organism on earth. We don't know how long it's going to stay around type of media.
Sure.
So it doesn't really follow the same
it
punctual, timely, right, functions that media still does, even in virtual format. So it's a good example, but I think it's just a production of a different nature,
Yeah. And I think what the utopians thought about the internet misunderstood how something like that could exist, and then you could still see this kind of like proliferation of what we're seeing now, which is kind of like endless noise, endless monetized
channels,
noise and channels that are directly fed by these economic streams. Like, so let's put the independent world of perfumery and artisanal perfumery aside for a second and talk about how for the majority of consumers out there today who are not plugged into the perfume world, who are watching a lot of video content about perfumes, they are getting perfumes from the large luxury conglomerates. It's a kind of illusion of choice, an illusion of discourse situation we're in, where there's a lot of noise about the same few operators in the space that own a lot of sub brands and are marketing stuff as distinct things to more targeted markets, but it's still all rolling up to the same place. And I think that's kind of the weird situation we're in now, where there's a lot of diversity, a lot of voices across very few platforms talking about the same things over and over again. If you're watching YouTube shorts, you're getting the same sorts of videos fed to you all the time, just done by different people. And it's this kind of when I look at fragrance discourse right now, it's very much like meme replication. Meme not in the terms of like internet meme, but this like mimetic replication of the same conversation over and over and over again. And you see that across the internet in general. And I don't know that I don't know what that means, because I think that's too new a phenomenon for human discourse to really understand what the implications are for our species. But I don't
not know who you're talking to. Basically, you're emitting a message that you want to create based on whatever you think you can equal that's out there already, but you don't know who's going to end up following you. And to talk to an unknown mass, and I'm not talking about size, I'm talking about fabric of people. And levels of interest and sophistication of interest and so on and so forth, whatever that means to you. I think you're right. I don't think we flipped the model. We're talking without knowing who we're talking to or what they want. So you had put up this earlier. Does Wiki have permanence? It's always being edited.
So Wiki as an entity will be, there's permanence to that, but it is sort of like constantly being, there's adding and subtracting and editing. So it's what would they crowdsourced information. So over time, that's going to change on the whims of people who add information, and whether or not whoever oversees that editing sees it fit, and will keep that edited information. So that's
mostly a community argument. Actually, if you dig into Wikipedia, it's actually very fascinating to see some of the pages that people are having like editorial wars over because of two different schools of thought on a particular idea, and somebody comes in and tries to rewrite it according to one angle, and then the other.
I look at it as a tree, right? It even says truncated information. It's a trunk, it's a stump. It's a tree. The tree stays, seasons come and go, different branches, kind of change leaves. Different leaves compete for the same amount of space or sun or whatever. And your liver, changes every 7 days. Every liver cells.
Mm-hmm.
It's still your liver. It's still the same kinds of cells. They're just new ones. I kind of look at it like that. I do see it as a permanence, but that's just my ideal self, because it's the only thing that I can cling to refer to as a collective good intent type of work, beyond all the lobby and all the lobby wars and all the political crap going on in editorial battles. I think it's still as an intent and as a resource for humanity. There's nothing like it. So yeah, it's that for me.
Well, how do we feel about stewardship? I remember a long time ago, several episodes ago on my stream, I said that I sometimes feel like I'm a steward, like I have sort of a responsibility on what I, on what I convey to my audience as a content creator. And, some people argue that there are different ways of conveying information without necessarily labeling ourselves as self-proclaimed subject matter experts, like let the, content speak for itself. How do we feel about the idea of an influencer or a content creator being a steward and being mindful of the messages that are conveyed through the content that we create?
Go ahead.
Should I go?
Yeah.
Brian's like, I think they're two different things. Being mindful of the messages and being a student are not necessarily the same thing. I think being mindful is being attuned to whatever your values are and staying authentic to that and be true to that and find the best way to manifest that in words that hopefully make your point to whoever it is that you're talking to. To be a steward, I think, is a slightly different function, because theoretically you're serving your audience rather than yourself. More so if you feel like you need to do the editing, the selecting, the dismantling, editing, and reassembling of the information for them, because that comes with, one, I think a slight dose of arrogance. You assume that they can't do it. You assume that they only think you can do it for them. You assume that you're the only one who can do it for them, and so on and so forth, which is dangerous as a reporter, as a journalist, as a content creator, as an analyst, as whatever it is that the four of us all are. I think that's a very dangerous way to look at ourselves. And it doesn't leave any room for enjoying the process. Because if you pigeonhole yourself, I'm going to try again. Pigeonhole yourself into this role, the way you make your choices moving forward will be entirely informed by this decision that from now on you're going to protect and serve. You become a gatekeeper for content that you yourself find and pass on, even though there's no gate. Again, they could find it.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a difference between, hey, I decided that this is the content that you guys need to consume, and this is how you're going to consume it. I already formatted it for you, and these are the main points that you're supposed to get from it. And here's what I got. And I'm going to share with you that. If it resonates, fine, take it further. We can talk. If it doesn't, why doesn't it? You know, there you have a dialogue. I think it's safest about anything that involves social transactions to talk about yourself. Done. Talk about yourself. Be you, find you, talk you, think you, whatever, and then communicate that. I do this and that. That's why when you were talking about people getting offended that somebody, you know, trashes their signatures, blah, 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 or even earlier when you were talking about people trying different foods from different gastronomies and trashing them and, you know, moralizing and all of that stuff, all I could think of is how my 8-year-old, when she was 3-year-old in the Bay Area. Now, Bay Area is very liberal and foo-foo, I admit it. But still, one of the first things that they came home with, social, emotional development exercises at school, was to not yuck somebody's yum. Do not yuck my yum. 3-year-olds were practicing not yucking somebody's yum. So in my home, I'm Eastern European. You can read it all right here. And I say it out loud, but that's a different story, right? Like it's there's no secret. But my partner is slightly more versed in diplomacy, let's call it. You know, all the time I would hear this over the dinner table. I love and try different things that are odd for some people, you know, and I cook everything. So that's one of the first things that she would say to me. Don't yuck my yum. Don't yuck his yum. Don't yuck her yum. She would correct me. A 3-year-old can internalize this concept. I don't understand why it is so hard. Or maybe it isn't hard. Maybe they do it for views. Maybe it's, you know, it's one of those like pathetic attempts to collect some sort of shock factor, which, by the way, is harder and harder. We don't get shocked by anything nowadays, right? We don't.
Yeah.
We don't get shocked by some lady deciding that her signature influencer move is to like spray 50 sprays. Whatever, to each their own.
To each their own.
I don't have to sit next to her. It's okay. Great. Fantastic. Yeah. If that gets her whatever 100,000 followers, 2 million followers, that's their business. If Jeremy's like doing this with his dick in front of the camera and like power and whatever, fine, sure, why not? Whatever. Just like Ryan was saying, there's no critical mass anymore. There's no danger of creating like long-lasting universal currents and, you know, no, it's an isolated, delusional bunch that does this or aggressive or whatever this or a very sophisticated, very foo-foo bunch that does this other thing. It's isolated media, bubbles over bubbles over bubbles. So I don't see the danger in anything. The only danger is for people who really want to say something important or something exciting to them. Because a lot of times they don't know how to cut through the noise and they don't understand the need for marketing themselves as a provider of such information, such truth, such excitement. Maybe, you know, maybe it's they make it fun. Maybe they don't say anything new, but they make it fun. Or they have boobs that are really good, or whatever, you know. It's like, but even there's always someone with better boobs, somewhere with more fun, with more shock factor, and whatever. So, marketing yourself as a provider of value, I think, is very difficult.
Yeah.
If you're following some sort of abolition of freedom.
Yeah.
So,
well, Rachel here, does this mean we cannot be proscriptive or have a politics of freedom or abolition?
I don't think this does, but I think there is such confusion right now, and I think it's going to take society, frankly, decades to kind of work this out with the technology that we have right now, that between what is a public square, what is a private space, what is a conversation between friends, what is a conversation between me and a politician, like a earnest political appeal. On Twitter, they're all one and the same. I could be talking to my friend group in one tweet and then tweet a political statement to the president of the United States the next. So there is a sense in which the modes of discourse we have in society have broken down very directly. And we've seen this on Facebook, how you got into fights with family members.
Yeah.
These
Oh,
lines
God.
crossed each other, right? So the conversation that you would ordinarily have at the dinner table then coincides with the conversation you would have in your political activist life in that role. There's not a sense in our unstructured society that there have been in prior versions of social life, where there are kind of like spaces where there are ceremonial roles you can kind of take on that may or may not be truly ceremonial, but you kind of like understood that this space is for this space is for this kind of conversation, and that's how I can enter into it and engage in this sort of conversation here and this conversation elsewhere. Everything right now collapses into the identity level, and that makes it very hard to have the difficult conversations, because we have these difficult conversations all the time. We have very strong moral convictions. We have very strong political convictions that do need to be expressed. We are struggling as a society to figure out how to have those, and actually our technology at this point is actually saying don't have them. You don't have to listen to people who disagree with you. You should actually, we're going to feed you more of what you only want to hear, which is actually one of the bigger societal problems we have now, which is actually like the antithesis of this idea. It's very hard to speak to people using social media who don't want to listen to what you have to say. It's very hard to have access to a true public square at this point in time. And who controls the megaphone is obviously a politically loaded question. I'm not saying like there should be one singular megaphone. I'm just saying this is a complicated problem. And as somebody who speaks in the social media space, and I see less of myself as like an influencer and more of like a vlogger. This is just me like dumping diary thoughts here. This is for me a very organic extension of like early blogger culture, where it was kind of like, here's what I'm doing today, here's what I'm thinking about today. Like maybe somebody's interested in that out there, maybe they're not. Kind of that very like message in a bottle sort of flow, as opposed to me trying to structure any one given message or function as a mouthpiece for brands or a curator for perfume recommendations or anything like that. I don't really see that as a symbolic role I've given myself. That it makes it very tricky to be in that spot, because there's no difference from a person watching YouTube videos between what I'm doing in that mode and what somebody else is doing in, you know, their kind of like perfume influencer mode of maybe, you know, I don't want to make this a point the fingers at like all the influencers who I don't like checklist, but like maybe doing things more commercial, so to speak, and are doing this as a job. I do this as a for fun, like I get to hang out with friends and talk about scented juice all the time hobby. It's not a career for me, and I have no career ambitions for what I'm doing here. And that's functionally different, but it's very like, because the platform equalizes everything, there's no differentiation for whoever's accessing my content. I don't have any way to like flag on my YouTube videos or my Instagram feed that,
like a disclaimer. Right.
So I don't know. Back to Rachel's very clear question, I guess we should circle back to that, is like absolutely real hard, true ethical conversations and political conversations need to happen, and they happen all the time. And I don't think we're saying just because everybody is coming at this from like a very like personal place and it's easy to talk about personal experience that those conversations go away. But I think that has made those conversations even harder to be had.
They just end up being the elephant in the room if they're avoided.
Right.
And, and then when you have an audience, you're going to have, you have an audience, you have your viewers, you have the ones who consume your content. They, may very well be the type of person, and I can't blame them for it, because this is the way that things have been, where they hang on to your every word to see if you're going to deviate from their belief system, because it's almost kind of like a tribalism now. So people are kind of looking for, are they going to say something that doesn't really align with, my own belief system, and make a decision based on that. And the thing is that I feel like, the responsibility that I have is not necessarily to single them out and cancel them and call them out, because it's just going to always happen. It's always going to be there. It's always going to be a part of this. But to understand that this is just, the way things are operating right now. And as long as I'm conveying, when I'm conveying with an open mind and encouraging conversation, encouraging a discourse, and not shutting down a different view, maybe, perhaps, see something as a teaching moment for me as well, because I'm communicating with somebody who has different views, trying to understand, where they're coming from. I think that's important. But the problem is that we're seeing so much of this polarity where, people, like I said, are hanging on to the words of, now somebody's saying something woke. Oh no, somebody's saying something that's, progressive, or, that's very Trumpy. It's like, it's sort of turning into that now. And it makes it difficult to have some, more comfortable conversations.
I disagree.
Oh, well, of course you can. Yeah, that's fine. And that's important. That is important, to have, disagreement here. I don't want an echo chamber.
I don't disagree with the last part. Yeah, it is getting more difficult to have these conversations, but I think part of that is the polarization is taking us further and further apart. I believe that's kind of like and that's a gut feeling. I don't know anything about the dynamic of social sentiment and how it evolves over eras. But I feel like there's a pendulum that goes between everybody's kind of the same, and then everybody's very polarized about a lot of topics, right? A lot about a lot of different aspects of life, be it their relation to religion. How you have a lot of people not religious, but you have a lot of ultra religious young people nowadays, not so much in the 70s or 80s, for example, comparatively on a global level. It's just an example. Things kind of go like this. So polarization is what makes things dialogue a little bit harder, because usually the two parts, if we're talking about dichotomies, are not equally willing to come to some center. So then it usually ends up being a longer trip for that person who's more open to accommodate the opposite views, more emotional labor, with not too much of a return. So a lot of people who used to do all this work are no longer willing to do it. I also think that we're becoming more firm in saying, no, not everything has to be said and not everything can be said. No, you cannot say everything. You might have an opinion. I know what your opinion is. I know where you stand on this spectrum. And I think your opinion is damaging for the world. No, you don't get to say it. We don't get to discuss something. Some things are not negotiable for me. That's how I look at the world. Some universal bits of what makes us human are not up for conversation. I don't need to know why somebody thinks they're racially superior to me. No, there's no conversation there. I don't want to hear it. I'm sure they have a lot of arguments. There's no conversation. I will not give space for that. You know what I'm saying? Like there's
Yeah.
some things they're not opposite views, and sometimes it seems like things are nuanced. They're not really. If you go to the why are you saying what you're saying? Why is your position this way and not that way? You go to one of these universal bits where it's very clear if you're in the same boat or not, or if they make room for you in their boat or not, or if they think you deserve the room that they already have in their boat or not. So yeah, some things are not. I don't see. I don't see, other than the intellectual exercise of discourse and debating and argumentation, I don't see any other value to having debates with or discuss, extreme points of view that are damaging and unhumane or
Well,
dehumanizing, whatever. You know what I mean.
Oh, well, I do want to clarify. Maybe I didn't make my point in the best way. I certainly would know where to draw the line where there are certain things that I would not entertain, like, and that would certainly not be one of them. I would not have tolerance for that.
So I think we're getting older, and we ain't got time for this shit on our street, anymore.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, fine, yeah.
I actually, and it's good that you bring this up, because there is like a whole live stream subculture in the fragrance community, and in that subculture with people who are live streaming, there is a lot of tolerance, and
tolerance
for hate, tolerance for homophobia, misogyny, and fat phobia, and lots of
phobias,
lots of hate, a lot of intolerance, and it is allowed through the gate because it mixes things up and it makes things more entertaining. And I
could list a couple of subreddits that are like that.
And then it really starts to really delineate from the fragrance conversation. And many of these live streams, the actual discussion on fragrance becomes such a small percentage of what's actually going on. It becomes more sort of a circus, and it becomes more the exploitation of certain personalities who choose to make jokes and make comments and make it part of their persona. And it's, and that's definitely, I've noticed this, and that's why I felt like, there are some live streams that I do think have steered away from that, or were not about that to begin with. And when I wanted to start my own live streams, I wanted to kind of bring it back to center. But it's out there, and it's tolerated, much the same way as yucking someone's yum and using that as content. That gets the views, and people love schadenfreude. They love laughing at other people's misfortune. They love looking at things that, seem to be worth joking about or making fun of. And it provides for, great, what do you call it? Sort of like junk, like kind of like.
I mean, let's face it. We all enjoy a good bad review, right?
Yeah.
We love it. Let's I mean, we all love it. That's why Luca Turin is famous, not because he's a good reviewer and a good critique. There are plenty of critiques out there. We love him because he's an asshole sometimes, right? Or he uses that kind of writing and that kind of pacing, and his commentary is delicious. We love it, right? However, everything else, creating marketing of content as opposed to the content of the content. Yeah, it's a good point. We should acronym the shit out of this. I think that's a very good point, and
Yeah.
I'd love to explore that further. I think it goes back to intent, right? The intent in the act of communication. What is your intent behind you creating this content? choosing to release it today on this channel? Why? Why are you doing this combo of putting things out in the world? So for somebody from the outside watching an influencer doing something, I can guess what their intent is, or I can look at their followers and see whether their intent caters to the follower base or not. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it does to the T. You guys ask me, so many people ask me to blah, 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 to show you. Blah, 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 blah. I've gotten so many questions about, what I wear when I go like till the farm. And yeah, this is what I wear or whatever. Sometimes you can tell that the growth has been organic. There's a lot of movement. There are a lot of different types of people coming to consume this content. And that tells you something about the intent of the influencer. Of course, we will never know. We will never know who's been paid, who believes what, who hits on girls so they cover that they're gay, who whatever builds an army because whatever. We can guess, but we don't know. For me as a consumer of content, I think the only thing that I can measure intent by is by looking at other followers and the activity. All the my English is getting numb. I'm sorry. The comment space and the mini accidental frag com surrounding this channel or another. If we have to deal with situations in which the influencer is the product, like somebody was saying above, the Demi and the Jeremys and whoever else is there, then that's a different conversation. But if the influencer is a content producer, period, then I get to choose to listen to them based on who else is listening to them, because that's what we all do, right? We kind of look for direction, for recommendations. If I don't know them, then the recommendations come from their following base. And for us who are not necessarily interested in building mass following, I mean, I don't know about you guys. I'm assuming you're not. You, Ryan, said you're not. No. Then quality of viewer, whatever that means to each of you, is a criteria for continuing or altering our activity, right? But if you start talking about quality of viewer, how does that impact, even on a lizard brain level, the choices you make when you create? How can we say we're independent content creators, independent thinkers? We don't do it for our masses, for our followers. We do it because we're trying to explain and express our own experience and our truth and do it in an authentic manner and so on and so forth. How can we say that if we care who's watching us? Here's a question for you. And is there somebody who doesn't care who's watching and reading you? I care. I look at all of them.
Yeah, no, I definitely think we all care to some extent. I don't think you get involved with publishing anything in the niche interest space, no matter what that interest is, without caring a bit about it. I would say too that something that I've struggled with sometimes is knowing what to do in conversation with people who leave comments, right? Do I reply to, positive comments only, which seems a little disingenuous? Do I reply to more negative comments too, which could be construed as argumentative or being full of myself? But if I don't respond to those, then I'm also being disingenuous. It's sort of a catch-22 in that respect,
yeah.
I think.
Yeah, it sucks. Darren says, keeping the focus on the fragrances would alleviate a lot of these tangential problems. But then why wouldn't we just read the marketing descriptions and be done with it? You can't keep focus on the fragrances because you're a human, and somebody's following me because I'm a human.
Yeah.
Somebody's following JJ because he's a human, and so on. Adam is writing to humans, and he's a human. you can't keep the focus on the fragrances, nor should we, dare I say, nor should we. The fragrance is just, floral, smelly water. It doesn't mean anything unless we look at it as carrying some meaning and intent and planning and manifestation and creativity sometimes and artistry of any kind. So yeah, I don't think we can not look.
Well, certainly this live
Everything
stream,
else.
we haven't really been talking about fragrance. I mean, we're talking about it indirectly, but we're not talking about fragrance itself, and we haven't for the past hour. And that's important. I've wanted, I think that having it kind of come back full circle is important in a way with my particular content, but it is important to discuss these things. Especially as creators and as people who consume this content. Nikki B says, I've said something in those live streams and not much has happened because all they care about are the views. So I just don't go there anymore. I come here because JJ is a good person who's passionate. I really appreciate that. But yeah, I don't know.
Bye Brian is saying the best perfume content is still not on YouTube.
Well,
on
truthfully,
blogs where thoughtful writing is the name of the game.
Yeah.
Yes, but that excludes a lot of people who don't read, can't see, can't hold attention. I mean, all the neurodiversities out there, and there's so many that they amount to probably half the population, and we refuse to think about this in day-to-day life. We just don't, because we don't have to worry about it. Yeah. I think I think we're cutting out a bunch of people who cannot consume content that way.
Well, I made it a point to branch out of writing, because for that very reason. It's only it's only accessible to certain people, and I wanted to be able to connect with a whole wider audience.
Makes sense. Also, you need a platform, right? If you're not technologically inclined, or if you don't have time. I no longer write for CaFleurBon. The door is always open, but I just didn't have time, and I haven't written in over a year. So, but it used to take me 10 hours, 15 hours when I started doing my own visuals. It would take forever. English is my fourth language. It's not easy for me, because my mnemonic devices, my artistry, I don't blush in English, right? I don't develop the same type of connection with whatever it is that I'm trying to emulate through writing as I do in my native tongue. And in my native tongue, I'm a stellar writer. I've been publishing since I was 8. But you feel differently, you hear differently, you think differently, and you express different sequencing in a different language. And that takes processing power. And in my case, that means time spent ruminating over stuff. I'm very happy that my articles had the response they did. I used to call them slow reviews, because that's what they were. It's slow review. It takes forever. My testing takes forever. My notes take forever. My reviews take forever. But it's hard, And then I can build websites, and I'm very fluent on the internetics, but most people don't. I know a lot of fantastic writers, amazing evaluators, who do not touch a WordPress, right? They don't post on anything. They don't like Facebook because it's miserable, and so on and so forth. So the knowledge is there, even the ability to write would be there, but then the operational bits of this are not to their disposal. So then they're either get guests on somebody else's blog, but that's not sustainable, right? Or what's the option? So writing, I agree. I feel it in my bones. Writing is, the written word is my preferred way of consuming information and feeling and anything. But it's not accessible. It's not easy. It's definitely not easy.
It's where I feel most comfortable, but I wanted to step out of my comfort zone. I wanted to see what I would do by expressing what I want to express through a different means. I think sometimes I can hide behind my writing. So sort of like pushing myself to do a YouTube channel, to do some other kind of content. And it's been really a wild ride so far. But yeah, that's where I feel most comfortable. But I wanted to see how I could reach out in different ways.
And then you get on a visual platform and people judge you on how you look. In my case, they also judge me on how I sound, because this is a fun fact. Most of my comments are about how aggressive and masculine and unsexy I sound, and how they prefer soft-spoken females who review fragrances. It's like music to my ears, I love hearing this. So people judge you and your level of expertise on stuff that in writing is not available for everybody's judgment, right? And maybe that's why you're saying it's not your comfort zone. Yeah, I have no problem with that. It's, but it is my comfort zone. I prefer to see people's eyes. I want to see your micro expressions. I care, because I grew up in communism and that's all we had to go by. People didn't talk about anything. You couldn't, so you kind of learned to navigate physiognomies, and luckily I'm able to do that. But I prefer it for this reason. Other people don't. And I understand why creating content this way, no matter how important or interesting or fun or fact rich or savory your material is, you can't put it up. And then once you put it up, it just gets lost. Because once
the timing on that.
I know somebody's going to be prettier, bustier, softer spoken, better editing, quality of image, better subtitles, better everything,
That's the biggest gripe that I get from people, is like, you need to invest in a better camera. You need to invest in a better this and a better that. You need to have like higher production, better production videos.
But okay, so I've said this before. I purposefully this I'm doing on a better camera than I usually record my videos. My videos are generally pretty lo-fi. Who cares about that stuff? Actually, you should not do it, because it differentiates you. At this point, it's your brand and you got to stick to it. If otherwise you're just going to look like every other influencer.
I know. Somebody should make a blog that looks like Craigslist,
Well, that's kind of like why I start my videos like that. I try to make my videos look lo-fi, like they were produced in like the 70s or 80s, like the intros, the music, because I really defiantly want to go against the grain of what it's supposed to be like, like how you're supposed to create this YouTube content. You have to have big fonts and big buzzwords and thumbnails.
You need the ring light, the beauty blogger ring light, and
the ring light, the picture of me with the bottle.
I didn't mean to read you there, Adam. I just
well, clearly I'm just trying to keep up with the fact that this room currently has no good light. So,
well, we can see your handsome face, and that's all that counts.
We can see your inside light.
Yeah, well, that's not all that counts. We care about what you have to say too. We can see your inside light, exactly.
It's my inside voice next to my inside light. I will say, agree with all of that. I will add one small caveat.
I knew you have to go.
Which is to say that audio matters. Oh, and this is probably, I'm a little biased. I had a job in radio for a while, and I love podcasts, and I've loved podcasts for many, many years now. So I'm a little biased about this, but I do think that when you see a reviewer, I don't care who they are, what they look like, or what their video situation is. If I can't hear them very well, or if the audio has like a ring to it, I start to, it also might have something to do with the fact that I have tinnitus. And so when I hear ringing things, it kind of makes me kind of crazy. And so that's my only caveat. Forget the fancy video, forget the ring light from above there, but also,
I have a reading light. That's what I use. It's basically just a light to read a book in bed.
Oh yeah, that's reading lights would be perfect. It's a nice quality light that those usually have anyway. Like Ryan's, I guess that's a little bit fancier than a typical reading light, but it has a beautiful glow to it.
You mean my cheap Target lamp that I got over there?
It's a very stylish lamp. You got a sort of a mid-century modern look going on in the background. It's a very nice setting.
Thank you.
Very warm.
But audio, you gotta have good audio. That's my point. That's just
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
we have to do an ASMR video.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, cover the microphone.
I do know that at minimum I needed to have a mic before I started YouTube. I remember I would jump onto live streams and I didn't even have a mic. I was just using the internal microphone of my laptop, and I knew that if I was going to do any kind of actual content, at minimum the sound is important. But I think as far as like production value, I think sometimes it can really distract from and this is just my opinion, the richness of the content itself. And you have all these things that kind of distract you and kind of say, "Ooh, this is flashy. This is great." But what are you really saying? But it's to each their own. Like you say, just like those who have the busty ladies who want to spray 50 times. That's the freedom of it,
I don't know how to connect this because I want to move the conversation.
No.
And I have no glue. But one of the things that I wanted to pick your brains on, or maybe it is connected, is the situation with tech innovations and their connection to perfumery, or innovations in perfumery. Maybe we should go straight there, because there are a few areas that I think are interesting. And here we are, I'm talking about our Target lamps and our lo-fis, and us not caring much about top of the line whatever production and editing. But what do you guys think about this new wave of news about digital stuff, AI, metaverse licensing, and cyborg developments? There's so much going out there nowadays. It used to be all about sight. It used to be all about movement, and now they're turning to the nose. And I'm very interested in what's happening. Do you have any news? Do you have any opinions? Do you have any fascinations?
This is a topic that I've been fascinated with for a while, because there's a video that you can find, and maybe I can dig it up, where this was before this recent, we've had a burst of AI chatter with ChatGPT going public and for experimentation and all those things recently. But a few years ago, I think, Alberto Marias gives a walkthrough, and he shows how he was using artificial intelligence at that time to create perfume formulas. You would plug in a bunch of ingredients and the computer would spit out a bunch of different variations on that. You could pick the batch that you liked best and refine it from there. And that's how presumably Alberto Marias was producing 100 perfumes a year that nobody could feasibly do. And he's very proud of the technology in the video. So this has been in play for a bit. So this is not the news that you're seeing, and the headlines are about newer innovations in that, but artificial intelligence already worked its way into the big fragrance houses.
Right. Now it's creating visuals and perfume descriptions, marketing copy.
Exactly. And I think what worries me about it is not necessarily like the technology in and of itself, because the technology in and of itself in the hands of the most idealized, benevolent actor is a very interesting technology. But what it does enable is especially in creative endeavors. So we're talking about the creation of something like a perfume or visual art or something like that, is a kind of laziness. And also, because of the way AI works currently, AI may evolve radically in the next 3 decades. It's come a long way just the past 10 years. But because it kind of operates on training wheels, you train it on a model and then it doesn't really move beyond that model. That means artificial intelligence is also constrained in how creative it can be. So leaning on it tends to result in a creative laziness, in the sense that if you're not really using it as the foundation to go much further beyond, like I'm going to artificially generate something as a foundation and then I'm going to do a lot more creative work on top of it, you end up with, it's been trained on existing models, so it kind of regurgitates what's already out there. And that makes, perfume has always followed trends. It's always been an analog to fashion. Most of the perfumes we know have been created by fashion houses as fashion brand marketing. That's not uncommon in the past century. But it is the fact that like now, what makes me very nervous is just like a world where most of our products are just kind of like just good enough. Like they're not great. They're like AI generated art, which I've played around with myself. It's kind of very interesting technology to generate a painting on the basis of a prompt and get like a kind of cool image. But it's not something you're going to put in the Louvre. It's not something that is really like, it's kind of like a cool, nifty thing. And I worry about a future where we have a lot of stuff that could be really interesting if it was made with more intense human innovation and the mistakes that come with that, and kind of creative accidents and impulses that come with that, then that we'll just end up with a lot of like samey, good enough products.
What if that's actually good?
There is an argument that's good. There is an argument that's good.
By forcing things to be good enough, it actually finally creates a clear differentiation between artistic and the rest. Artistic is not going, because if it is artistic, then we can argue that the intent is to create, to be creative, to express some sort of message or feeling or convey a vision to the world, right? And if that's the case, and then the act of creating is internally motivated, and the perfumer will keep doing it no matter what. They're going to make their art, right? An artist creates. Doesn't matter who buys it, who knows it, whether people see it or not. They're going to make it. They're not going to go away. Artisan makers will not go away. Indie perfumers and perfumeries will not go away. If they stay and won't use AI or other, mass producing technique, other than maybe smarter processing, which I think is going to be a current in 2023, but that's a different story. If they're not using that, then between them and those houses who do, the distance might not be grand, but the fabric of that difference will make things so clear that it will, automatically forever create categories. And never will somebody who's using AI be able to say, I'm making art. No, you're not making art. You're making something. It's not art, because here's art, Yeah. So then the differentiation is done for us, and it's making things easier. What if that's the case?
I think it's very possible that is the case. This isn't a one-to-one analog, but I think you can look at what happened with coffee culture in America as a parallel. Like I can remember very much growing up in a time where like you wanted a coffee, you got McDonald's coffee, you got a Dunkin' Donuts coffee, you got that was the baseline for coffee in America. And then Starbucks exploded, and then there were Starbucks across the street from other Starbucks for a while. And then Starbucks became the new baseline, right? Starbucks, which I don't think Starbucks is very good coffee, personally speaking. Sorry, folks out there if you like Starbucks, but it is a new baseline. It's a new.
It's called burned.
It's called burned.
Yes.
Sorry, I remembered I had a mic. So.
But what Starbucks set is a new baseline expectation for what coffee was. So first, it put all the coffee houses out of business for a little bit there, but then you saw a resurgence of like the independent coffee shop, and they're all over and back in force once again, because the baseline was set, and arguably we have better baseline coffee and we have just as many independent coffee shops as we ever had. across America, and now you can get very high-end coffee
Right.
at your fingertips. That's far beyond the quality of Starbucks. So I think you could see a situation like that where AI just sets like a new baseline, and you still see exceptional creativity on top of that, exceptional workmanship.
It also brings the entry point lower.
Right.
The perception of the entry point lower, so that somebody who otherwise might be intimidated by niche perfumery would now be more inclined to think they can. People didn't go into gourmet or whatever artisan coffee shops before Starbucks appeared. Starbucks was not McDonald's. It was a step above that at baseline things. And, people did enter it. There was a need for it, obviously. That's why it was as successful as it was. So I don't think AI is particularly bad for perfumery if the market will behave in the typical ways a market does evolve. Also, somebody is saying, not in the know. Can you say something is not art? Yes,
I'll try to
maybe.
let's share
But
that
then
here.
there's something else. Rachel says people using AI can make art. Yes, they can. It's another tool. And I believe just like new molecules being discovered, new technologies being discovered. Somebody was talking about new in vivo technologies for headspace. We have more at our hand to operate with. And you might not, create a formula that includes some new, whatever, fancy or unknown material. But if AI is connected to some database of materials out there and comes up with a combination that otherwise you couldn't have conceived, you being whoever, person, entity, whatever, then you might then venture into making spaces that otherwise you wouldn't have done on your own. So it's not necessarily, that's why I'm saying I don't think AI is going to ruin things for us. But it's interesting. This past week we had a dinner at our house and we got drunk and we were talking specifically about this. The intent of what goes into programming is questionable, because it's very, very hard to baseline that as a universal, acceptable starting point. So it's, I think we're going to go back and forth with this artisanal, with this AI stuff for a long time. One interesting thing that I read about very recently and made me think of, what else is there? So there was this very small picture and poor quality of a plant. It's called Silene stenophila. I memorized the name. That's its new Latin name. It's 30-some thousand years ago, one of those squirrels in Ice Age, and found a seed and ate some of it and then buried the leftovers, whatever. And then as things melt down, they discovered this, plantless seed, mature seed. And sure enough, now they have a flower. They germinated the damn seed. Life finds a way. They germinated the damn seed. The plant grew, and now there's a flower on it. I mean, my first thought was, what do you smell like? Right. Theoretically, you can go as far as that, recreating the many of the plants of the past. Some of them documented in more recent history, not glacier, Ice Age times, but more recent history. We have documentation on perfumery going back 6,000 years. We know the names of plants. Some of them were even drawn out with names, with properties, because perfumers or smell, I don't even know what to call them, smell professionals 6,000 years ago were documenting and inventorying all the stuff they were working with, right? Some of them no longer exist. Some of them we know what they smell like because they have comparative language in some of the Egyptian documentation, some of the stuff found in Cyprus and so on. We know it smelled like propolis and blah, blah, blah with a tinge of wine or whatever. So we have a notion of what something used to smell like, but now they're extinct. And why not have conversations about that? Like, the sky's the limit, right? There's so much happening out there that I feel at this point, since there's no gate, the more the merrier, the more the merrier, basically. The sky's the limit.
So there's a question here, Dana. What about plants that don't have smells? Who claimed and entitled how an orchid or a camellia should smell like? Well, there are a number of orchids that actually are fragrant. There isn't one orchid scent, but there are a number of fragrant orchids that can smell anywhere between mint or vanilla or chocolate or any kind of florals. But I don't think camellia has a scent. But I get the general gist that David is getting with here. So what is your take on this?
Whoever gets there first. That's my answer to it. It's funny because you were asking about the recent acquisitions, and this is my latest. Me in January. I'm not buying anything. I have 2,000 bottles, this and that, and samples. I'm not purchasing anything. I'm not going to show you my tray because I went to a fair last week. But after the tray, that looks, I'm going to show you. After this, it's stuff, all sorts of stuff. And then after this, which is also January, because I decided I'm going to get my artisans back.
A lot of artisan.
This is January artisans. I'm rebuilding my collection because I let go of it too soon. And I'm like, no more buying. If I buy maybe something cheap and stuff. And then I got this, which goes back to Aqualaria Blossom. This is Arij.
Do you mind if I expand the image just so that we can see the bottle? Okay.
Sure. It looks like this. I need to cover my face, right? Because it doesn't focus properly. It looks quite heavy. It's a 30 milliliters. Heavy cap, heavy everything. It looks like a very well polished glass. I think you can see it reflecting. And the box I have is the silky stuff and with Arij on top. It's a collaboration with Agar Aura. Or Aura, as people call it. And here are the notes. Taha Said from Agar Aura. Now, this is interesting because it's called Aquilaria Blossom. Aquilaria, of course, is the Latin family name for the oud family, right?
Agarwood, yeah.
Yes. Oud trees do have some sort of flowers, but flowers don't smell. So it goes back to who decides what it smells like. Whoever gets there first. So these guys were like, okay, the flowers don't really smell like anything. Let's make a fragrance that imagines the scent of a oud tree flower. And I think they did a fantastic job. I am only in the beginning of my trip with oud. I don't think it's ever going to be done. I'm a perfectionist and usually tend to go into refining my sense of distillations and aging and technologies and hands, and it's a disaster, and I'm going to be ruined after this. But even with my at the beginning experience with oud, I think this is a very, very, very fine hand. Fantasy notes, yes. Blended to the gods, absolutely glorious. The problem with it, apparently, is that the diehards of Arij and Agar they're disappointed because these guys being so big on the oud scene, they're not too many. I mean, less than 10, right? Makers. They're so big on the oud scene that not using enough oud in a collaboration fragrance is Unpardonable. Impardonable? You
I
know
think
what I
that's
mean.
I get it. Look, it's John. John's with us.
That's,
Hi.
Hey.
that's
It is fantastic.
I just want to comment there. I have every time there is a conversation on any forum about like what should I try for oud, the oud gatekeepers just sweep in and just soak all the air out of the room. It's just the worst. I love oud and I love fine oud and I love sampling oud, but the oud enthusiasts are as bad as like worse than the vintage purists in this hobby. You can't talk to them at all.
It's tough. It kind of reminds me of like, I love dogs, but I have a difficult time with a lot of dog owners. But that I digress. But it's the same idea. Yeah, I kind of experience that as well. And what's unfortunate about that is it sort of ends up turning me off on exploring houses like this, which is unfair. Because now I'm sort of chomping at the bit wanting to try this Aquilaria blossom. And I never really wanted to venture into Rouge L'Adore because of that association, which is patently unfair.
I have a few different ones. This was not in my plan. It was a blind. But it was a very successful. I do know and pretty much love everything Agar does. But anyway, another thing that I wanted to show you, and let me know if you want to take the conversation back to the serious stuff.
No, let's keep it.
No?
We have a half hour left. Let's keep it.
We
light.
do?
Yeah. So we have just until about a little after 9:20. There's no firm cutoff. So for the last half hour or so, we can just make it a little bit more playful. Like, well, I do know that Adam has to get going soon. So.
Not a firm cutoff for you. I'll phrase it that way. I do have to cut off, unfortunately.
6 p.m. my time, because our dear host forgot that he told me we're going to start at 5:30, not at 7:30. So
yes, that was my snafu. So unfortunately, I left Dana. Dana, should I pronounce it Dana or Dana, or does it? As I want it to be the correct pronunciation.
I appreciate it. They call me Dana back home. So
Dana.
If you speak any Spanish or Italian or French, or it's a clean But every time I said it like that in the States, people thought my name was Donna. D-O-N-N-A.
Donna. They would, yeah, Donna.
And I was too new an immigrant to feel like I have the right to correct them. So I didn't. So I got used to Dana instead, but both are fine.
I feel like I'm like flipping back and forth because I hear so many folks refer to you as Dana that kind of stuck as well. So
it's not their fault. It's it's kind of inherited. The next thing that I want to show you, because it's very rare, and if you see it, let's say, ooh,
what is that?
Oh, me, yeah.
Oh, yes.
No, I just saw me.
I think Adam did need to did you need to sign off right now, Adam? I didn't want us to.
Oh, yes. So, no, okay. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me, as always. I can't wait to join again.
Of course. Time. We'll have you back soon.
Good evening.
All right. Take care, Adam.
You. Hi.
Hi.
So,
okay. Whoop.
I'm going to show you this in case one of you is super lucky and you go to some Goodwill or you go to some whatever. Maybe you have a very rich neighborhood in your town and people donate very expensive, rare, discontinued fragrances. This house is a house that I've known of for a long time, and somehow I missed the cutoff for ordering. And it's called Nabuko. So the house is called Nabuko. I'm going to show you the box because I only have this one. There are 3 fragrances in the whole line. Is haute perfume, basically, created in 97 or so in France. And it includes 3 fragrances. One is called Nabuko Parfum Fin. Fine perfume Nabuko, and the whole line, of course, is inspired by Nabucodonosor, which is the Babylonian ruler, and the 3 fragrances are following him, Nabuko Parfum Fin, his wife named Amatis. So Amatis Parfum Fin is the second, and the third is this, which uses these Greek symbols. theoretically, they're supposed to spell or look like love when you see
Yes.
them. So this is the one that unites the two. Inside, it's like this. They used to sell for about 260 euros, I think, for the big bottles. Now the big bottles are not to be found. This is like 2, 3, whatever. I would have purchased these even if I were on a new buy. I hear you. The big bottles were about 260. They come in a form of a pretty light mass oil. It almost feels like essential oil. You know, it's kind of like eteric, and it evaporates quite quickly. It's not greasy. It kind of feels like that. And they looked like, I don't have anything to show you here. The original bottles looked like big, very heavy blocks of black glass. The bottom was glass and the inside was carved like a sphere. So the outside looks like a cube, but the inside looks like a sphere. It was very striking. And there were 60 milliliters, I believe. There's a 30 milliliters version. And then there's this one, which is 5 and looks like a vial. Like this. Reminds me of the ones from Pure Distance.
Oh yeah, kind
Pure
of like
Distance?
torpedo-like.
A little bit. This is very heavy. There's I'm going to show it to you because I don't know if you're going to see them in stores, but if you do, recognize it and buy it, particularly if it's very hard to find these Nabukos. Nabuko Parfum Fin, actually, if I was ever close to a signature, that would be it, even though it's the Pour Homme for men of the 3. And inside there's a baguette, very heavy metal, and that's how it presents. And the Parfum Fin is, like I said, a combination between the Pour Homme and Pour Femme. This is the unisex, the only one that's for both. It's a very hard pseudo amber. It's very hard to define because it's more of a odd fougere, like ambery fougere-ish. I can't find words to describe any of the 3. So you can feel free to go look it up, look all of them up. And if you ever see any of the bottles anywhere, grab them. The big ones go for, thousands of dollars. Whoever loves them, they have somewhat of a cult following. But it's absolutely glorious perfumery. I put them in the same bucket conceptually and as execution with fragrance makers like Jar, for example.
Jar, Jar, with the Golconda, and yet those are
yes. So it's kind of in the same realm of intent, execution, and quality of ingredients. So absolutely fantastic. I think if I was to collect but I had 2 of the big bottles in I don't even know what to say. I had 2 of the big bottles in the shopping basket, and then by the time I remembered it and I wanted to press the button, it had discontinued. It's gone.
Goodness.
Who are your people talking about?
In this chat. Well, let's take a look at the chat. What's going
on?
So this is a little bit of a self-deprecating comment. You remind him he does not know shit. It's a little self-deprecating, but
well, let's say you don't know my shit. You know your shit.
Yeah, he knows his shit. He does. Rudy does know his shit. And I'm educated. I had no idea. I did not have any knowledge of Nabuko until tonight. And as a matter of fact, so
fantastic house. I don't know why they discontinued it. I don't know what's going on, but it's one of those things. And the last thing that I want to show you, if I have time, and Ryan still has patience with us.
Oh, I do.
No, we're taking it all. We're drinking it all in.
This is, I don't know why it took me this long to do this. And maybe people do talk about it, but I've never heard anybody talk about it. The most sophisticated hostess present. If you go to fancy parties where there's a hostess who's dressed up and she's hosting, and where they're hosting, and you know, you have to like get to the tea and take your corsage or a bouquet of flower or whatever, and you need to present a hostess gift because apparently that still happens. I think I would move away from expensive candles, from that stuff. And if you're still focused on offering smell as a gift or a smell experience as a gift, you go with papier d'Arménie.
Yeah.
So papier d'Arménie, this one is the Italian version made by Santa Maria Novella, and it's called Carta d'Armenia. It's a very old bit. So papier d'Arménie was invented like 1880 something. And it came about in France because some dude who was working something pharmaceutical got together with some other dude who was a commerciant something traveling. And they discovered that in Armenia, that's why it's called papier, which means paper, d'Arménie, of Armenia, from Armenia. In Armenia, they used to burn benzoin, just like many different countries and cultures do, burn some resin or some material to purify the air. They love the smell. Who doesn't love benzoin, right? I have a few pieces here because I was trying to film something for my Romanian population and talk to them about benzoin. It's quite orangey and quite breakable. It smells sweet. It smells like happiness. It's sunny and it's vanillic, and it's one of the friendliest resins out there. So what they did was develop a method to take the smell of benzoin and put it into something that can be used to fragrance the air. The process is very simple. Anybody can do it at home. You basically take benzoin, if you have time, take benzoin, put it in alcohol, let it macerate. The more, the better. If you grind it, it's even better. I usually try to use like a coffee grinder, you know, the one with zzz. And if it's pulverized, then more flavor is extracted from it. Then you take any blotter paper and you dunk it in that and you let it dry. If you want it to dry slower, you dunk it in water with salt first. Yes, it's completely inexpensive. There are fancier versions of it. So they present in pretty much the same way. This is, like I said, Santa Maria Novella makes this. I think Edes makes it. Guerlain has some. And who else? There are not too many producers. I think Savon du Marseille or something. But it's been sold as... This has been sold as a papier de Turquie, of Turkey, for some reason. And in America, at some point, there was, of course, going back to our conversation about the uber sanitization and moralization of cleanliness, it was called Air Clean. How boring, right? You have all these like... And then in America, when they launched it in the 1920s or something, it's called Air Clean. But the purpose of it is exactly that. Mine are coming like this. They're individual cartolinas. They're little pieces of blotting paper with a print on them. They look like this. Carta d'Armenia on the front. And it says brucia senza fiamma, which means it burns without flame. And the Santa Maria Novella Firenze on the back. And all you have to do, I love Bois d'Armenie, of course I do, and I have it home. I love benzoin bohème. What's not to like? Everybody likes benzoin.
Love it.
The friendliest, yeah. And you do this. I have it because, again, I was going to film something today. You do this, you light it on fire, and then you burn it.
That's
like
wonderful.
this. Usually I kind of fold it. Sometimes it comes in these little accordions with like perforated margins, and you just break a piece, and that's it. And it smells absolutely phenomenal. And I'm obsessed with it. And I don't know why I haven't gotten it sooner, because I have burned it before. It's just like I didn't intentionally think of ordering or seeking it out, so that's it.
It's magnificent stuff. I have some of my own, and I actually first learned of it when I was dabbling with perfume blending. And let's have the folks take
Rachel
a look
was
at that
asking how I use it. This is how I use
Yeah.
it. You just burn it on a safe surface.
Firmenich has an Armenian wood base, and that's how I don't know why it was called Armenian wood base, because it's, papier, the Armenie, and it smelled, I just love the smell of it, and I did a little research, and I ordered some of my own, and it's just magnificent. Yeah.
I absolutely adore it, and
Yeah.
I know a lot of people know of it, but for some reason I don't hear. Constantly refer their country as America, and it's simply wrong. America is comprised of North, Central, and South America.
Yeah. It's funny how that works that way. Instead of USA, it's America.
Well, I think it's just because saying United States just sounds very clunky. Sometimes there's nothing behind it beyond the word being prettier, and America is just a prettier word to say than United States. United States
prettier than USA too, like an acronym. Like, I'm from the USA. Well, some people do. They chant at you.
Maybe we're addressing the degradation of attention spans too, because there are a lot of United something. United Sao Tome and Principe, like United
Arab Emirates,
everything. There's so many Uniteds out there. It's a mouthful. America, just add that's funny.
America.
I'm gonna leave you guys. Thank you so much for having me. I have a hard cut at 6 my time. I need to catch up.
I didn't realize it was already that time. We're gonna stick around a little bit, but Donna, I'm doing it correctly. Not Donna.
You are.
It's wonderful to have you here. It was wonderful to see you and to speak with you. And I hope that we can do this again soon.
We should.
Yeah.
I don't know when. I can't commit because things are crazy, but it was really fun. As always. Ryan, it was good to meet you.
It was wonderful meeting you, Don.
Right.
Have fun.
Take care.
Have fun, everyone. Go light on these people.
All right. Bye-bye for now, Donna.
Bye.
All right. So it's just going to be Ryan and us for a little while. We'll sign off in about 20 minutes or so. But Ryan, I wanted to just bounce back with you now that Donna had already done a little bit of her show and tell. I know that you are here pretty much every week, so I don't expect you to have a bunch of new stuff just a week later. But
I do. I did get some stuff in swaps. Hold on. Did I put them? I put them away because I think I immediately put them on my swap list. So okay. So I got Francesca Bianchi, The Dark Knight, which is her dark leather scent. I got that in a swap. I think it's a very nice fragrance. I just can't really wear it. It goes so powdery on the kind of like orris butter dry down in a way that I find just a bit much, so I just wouldn't wear it. So onto the swap list it goes. And then the other one is what is it? Unutamam from Nishani.
Nishani, yeah. That's Miguel Matos.
Right.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Fascinating creation. Utterly not for me. I got a big halitosis thing.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually one of my concise reviews. People say I don't have critically negative reviews on things, but I did a very simple review on that one because I just couldn't let go of the idea that when I smell that, it reminds me if you're in this really diverse herb garden with all these different herbs, but somehow that herb garden has a very bad case of halitosis and swamp ass. And that's all I really had to say about it. And I just couldn't really endure it for longer than 10, 15 minutes. I had to.
Yeah. It's a lot. Some people seem to love it. And power to you. I think it's a very interesting composition. I just couldn't. I would never wear it in a million years.
Yeah.
So onto the soft list it goes.
Absolute scrubber. Scrub-a-dub-dubber. It's like I had to do like with like some heavy duty lava soap That's one of those that's tough to get off. I feel like there's a serious void without Donna. It's like
There is.
I hope she can come back. And I had
more energetic than the two of us, so it's kind of like she had like the force of personality to kind of like carry us through a full 2.5 hours of conversation.
I would explain her as lightning in a bottle, and it's just like I'm just like transfixed, and it's just like I just love that she was able to join us this evening. I have one show and tell. Okay. One sort of show and tell here. So a little bit of background on this. So do you know those NIFT gift certificates? You may or may not know them. So there's this gift certificate thing called the NIFT program, and they'll send you like a series of options for gift certificates. You could get like a wine subscription, or you could get, eco-friendly dog food or something, or you could go to get a restaurant gift certificate. Well, one of them just so happened to be Scentbird. So I visited the Scentbird website, and clearly I'm not the target demographic for Scentbird, just given the way that it's set up. It's for somebody who is a discoverer of fragrance who want to find that signature scent, and they get little samples. And so it really didn't have much to offer to me until I realized that they actually sold full bottles of fragrances. You could just buy fragrances off them. So I was looking at the different things that they sold, and I'm like, that's kind of like not a brand that I'm interested in. But there was one brand that happened to have been around. Maybe I'll do a little zoom. One brand that happened to be around that since the 70s called Le Jardin Retrouvé. And I heard things about sandalwood suckery off and on, and it didn't really stick with me. But I saw that they were selling it. Oh, here's a light. Okay. And the thing that really struck me was all of the reviews on Scentbird, where they were pretty much eviscerating this. Like, it smells like toilet bowl cleaner and bathroom cleaner, and it smells like camphor. It smells like old people. It smells like, gross and old fashioned. And of course, with all these horrible reviews for it, I had to sample it. And sure enough, I fucking love it. And that just seems to be the way. That all of these reviews knocking how like it just, I could read some. I should actually read some of them, but I will tell you why. I'll tell you why I think that it's a really brilliant fragrance. And mind you, that it was composed in the 70s, and I'm sure a lot of these people who use Scentbird were barely alive in the 90s, so they don't really have like a good reference of older fragrances. So to them, it's old men and old ladies in bathrooms. Let me see if I can find. I'd love to do just a recital of these because they're so funny. All right, sandalwood, sacre or sacré. There's actually an accent above the E. Here we go. I got it coming up here. All right, it has 3 out of 5 stars. It's very poorly reviewed on Scentbird. And all right, pardon me. I should have had this already in a tab. Okay, I'm opening up the ratings. 3 out of 5, 155 rating. Okay. It reminds me of a grandparents, not in that classy age sense, but more towards the dated sense. Smells like my grandpa's aftershave. It smells like toilet cleaner. That's just the review. That's it. Old woman's perfume with a strong smell of flowers. I think it's terrible. Vintage smelling grandpa's old cologne bottle found in a basement next to a bucket of used synthetic floor cleaner. I have no idea how a clean scent managed to have such a cheap synthetic smell with a cleaner note. There's nothing sweet about it. It's erring on the side of grandma's perfume. And it just goes on. So on. This stunk so bad. It's too powdery. It reminds me of old people who are about to die in a nursing home. Lots of ageist shit. So I was like, you know what? I gotta try this for myself. And it's fucking beautiful. It's like this beautiful spring, summertime kind of sandalwood scent. And it opens with like this petitgrain. It's like this, and maybe the children, maybe the young folks are not used to the petitgrain, but it's a very, very prominent petitgrain note that it opens with. Maybe that's why it makes something totally cleaner. I have no idea. And it dries into this nice jasmine, and then it is this sandalwood and patchouli in the base, and it's very sheer, it's very translucent, and it's gorgeous stuff. And I just wanted to say all these good things to counteract all of the bad things that were said on the website. But that is my newest discovery, and I'm loving it. I think you'd appreciate it too. Le Jardin Retrouvé Sandalwood Sacré.
Okay. Well, there you go. I mean, I didn't even know Scentbird would carry a scent like that. So
I think that they may have some sort of agreement with whoever distributes this particular brand. The brand Le Jardin Retrouvé. The perfumer is a Yuri Gutsats, and he composed these back in the 70s and the 80s. It was like one of those like niche before there was niche types of houses, kind of like like Méta Parfumier and L'Artisan and Diptyque. It's just beautiful stuff. And it's just like, I almost can predict it now. When I see like a lot of reviews like that, I'm going to fall in love with it. Fernando says, I think JJ will also suggest you Jean Couturier Coriandre, very interesting fragrance from the 70s, marketed to women, but it's unisex for today's standards. There's a sourness to that I love. And I guess some people think that fragrance should not be sour. But there's a sourness to the florals, like a crisp sourness to the rose. And there is just as the name suggests, is a very prominent coriander note. And I love that. That's one of my favorite classic Shibras. And the recent formulations are still relatively really affordable. I think they're like $15 a bottle. Rudy says, I signed up to Scentbird for 6 months. I got all the expensive niche fragrances and canceled. That's how you do it. That's how you go about things. Petitgrain as base is boss. Yeah, I love it. I love it. Mm-hmm. I love the kind of reviews because I know I'll probably like it, especially if they say it'll smell like a grandma or a grandpa. Yeah. But I think you would actually, because you are a fan of Lorenzo Villoresi, I feel like this is something that he could have composed. So.
Oh, well then it might be up to speed. I'm just scrolling through the comments here. Yeah, I feel like that could be something, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of challenging. I try not to judge people for it because I think there's just like not a reference point for that. It's kind of like if you had, you learn this from friends, but like if your friends didn't have like adventurous food opportunities growing up, and odds are they can end up not being very like picky, not adventurous eaters later in life too. And I feel like it's the same thing, if folks just don't grow up with reference points for this, they're going to hate it. But it makes me sad. I generally don't care what people think, but I do hope I'm not being silently judged by everybody. I'm just like walking by when I'm wearing my Lorenzo Villoresi's.
Oh God, Lorenzo Villoresi, be still my beating heart.
I know. I love it so much.
It's just, and Luca Turin hates him for what reason I don't know. He destroys every one of his fragrances in his books, and maybe the same reason why these Scentbird people are destroying, I don't know, Sandalwood Sacré. It's just a matter of taste, matter of taste.
Yeah, I don't know. Luca Turin can, I don't know. I enjoy a good provocateur as much as the next person. So there's something to be said for the performative power of a critic just throwing vicious remarks out there. Actually, that's the thing most people don't realize about like Nietzsche. Nietzsche's hilarious to read because he was just like the greatest like one-liner zinger in the philosopher set. Like he just skewered people instantly. And I feel like Luca Turin does that well for perfumes. I rarely agree with Luca Turin. You know, it was kind of interesting when you go back, and I think you can Google it, but like if you want to look at like a list of all the fragrances that Luca Turin has rated like 5 stars, somebody's compiled that.
Yeah.
I was looking at that and I was like, it's just a very surprising list. Like it's just not, it's a very odd, peculiar list of things.
Like fucking Estee Lauder Beyond Paradise. Like, ugh.
Yeah.
And it's the woman's version. Everybody thinks it's the men's version, which I also think is hideous too. But I don't. Yeah, it's not like it's. I know there are some people who pretty much used his reviews and Tanya's reviews as sort of like a playbook of what they should be looking into.
Mhm.
And to a degree, I've sampled things just because of how actually it's the same way that I did the Scentbird thing. Like, either the 5 stars where it's like, why are they 5 stars? And I sample, and then the 1 stars, I'm like, why did they tear this to bits? I want to find out. And I'm telling you, there are probably more fragrances that they gave 1 star that I love than 5 star.
Probably so. Like I'm looking at the list right now, and it's like, I mean, yeah, you get some of the classics on there. There's just very standard like Guerlain, Usual Suspects, and things like that. But I don't know. I'm just gonna say some of those choices are pretty odd. But I think that's fine. I think it's good to have interesting choices. I don't think my 5-star collection would be any less puzzling to other folks. But
Oh yeah. I mean, there are going to be people who are considered, the connoisseurs who would wonder why I, put on a pedestal certain fragrances and think that they're I mean, there's a few from Maître Parfumerie Gantier, which I know that like people think smell just too bizarre to wear, and I love them, and I wear them with aplomb.
Right. I hear, like, for example, like here's one that I feel like he's just trolling people with, which is Secretion Magnifique by Etat Libre d'Orange.
Did he give a 5-star for that?
Yeah, and called it a nautical floral.
Nautical floral. I mean, it reminds me of and the closest thing to nautical would be low tide. That's what I get from it. Like maybe a floral low tide with a bit of like, I don't know, like a little bit of, I don't even want to get too graphic, but you can imagine how graphic I could be. Having to do with blood, but having to do with other secretions, which is obviously the theme, and they did it right. And I just didn't really I found it to be an interesting essay, but to give it 5 stars, five fucking stars.
I'm just saying it's just a choice. Why are we talking about?
Oh God! Speaking of fucking low tide, what? Wait, how is she coming into the conversation?
Oh, I guess Rachel commented that.
Nietzsche can go very Ayn Rand or very one-liner depending upon how you read him. Yeah, Ayn Rand is. Oh God. Talk about tedium, and talk about like, oh, what a horrible human being. See, we don't have to just talk about fragrance. We can talk about literature as well.
We can talk about Nietzsche. I find Ayn Rand a very boring person to talk about. I find Nietzsche a very interesting person to talk about and read. And that's my take on it. So I'll admit that.
Oh, pure history. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I figured.
yeah.
What would be a fragrance that Ayn Rand would wear?
Trump's Empire? No, I'm just kidding.
What was it? What did you say?
Trump's fragrance Empire or whatever.
Or the one that he released. It was basically, it used the same bottle as like Lauder for Men, except with a gold cap.
I don't know what it would be. It would have to be something Art Deco. It would have to be something very, I don't know. Like if I don't know. I don't know what she would possibly wear.
Yeah,
That
maybe
is-
she just didn't wear anything. And she
I
seemed
don't know. I try not to think about what Ayn Rand would like in terms of perfume. I try not to think about Ayn Rand in general. That is
Well,
fine. That is
let's just move on from her then. What about Nietzsche? What would he wear?
Oh, geez. I mean, I feel like you would have to create an interesting Gothic perfume for him. But it's very interesting because his trajectory is from, religious scholar to like crisis of faith to mental disintegration. So you could create a very interesting 3-act fragrance around that concept. That would be very interesting.
Fathom V.
Loss of faith, wallowing and finding your way through the despair and then kind of losing your mind.
Oh, that's a good one too, Valdenui. But also, I think Fathom V by what's the name of the house? I have it, and I.
Oh, yeah.
Fathom, hi, what's the name of it? I have the bottle sitting right over here. I'm not leaving my desk because I'm tired of having to deal with my sound issues every time I leave my desk. But the one. Yes, Beaufort, London. The house that also has that nasty kind of like a biscuit that smells like bad breath scent. It smells like, I forgot the name of it, but it smells like kind of vomity. Like it smells like somebody vomited like crackers and biscuits. I don't like anything else from that house except for Fathom V. Every other scent, I'm sure I'm gonna upset people. We're huge fans, but hey,
I have Coeur de Noir and I like that, but that's all I would. But I didn't love it.
I didn't try that one. Maybe that would be the second one. But I tried like 3 or 4 others that were.
I don't think it's to your taste, to be honest. But I think it's for what it is pretty cool. It's kind of like I would describe it as a Phantom of the Opera, sort of like smoky leather. Like you took a leather, dipped it in ink, and then like
I could appreciate that.
Dosed a bunch of like birch tarry leather, smoky leather on top.
Yeah, that I could appreciate. But there have been other things by Beaufort that I've tried that are just too conceptual, that they don't. There is a part of my brain that's always looking for. It's the left part of my brain fighting with the left side of my brain fighting with the right side of my brain, where I'm trying to find some sort of logic in a fragrance, and there's so much dissonance in some of their fragrances that I just have a tough time getting through them. But Fathom V was the one where it was an exception, and I find that one quite compelling and beautiful.
I think I really liked Fathom V because I just looked up the notes to make sure that I recognized which one you were talking about. I think that was one that I actually responded to. I like the idea of the house. Like I like the idea of this sort of like British nautical military category of scents. I just feel like they skew towards the point of, it's not even that they're just too conceptual. It's just that sometimes the juxtapositions in them are just so it verges on cacophony is what I would say.
Cacophony, exactly. Dissonance, cacophony, that the perfumer or perfumers behind, forgive me, I don't know if there's just one perfumer or a crew of them or whoever, if they've outsourced, but whoever's working on them, to me, and I'm sure Donna would challenge me on this, and rightfully so, because that's what I love about her, is that the perfumers seem to either defiantly go against the tenets of making perfume to create these concepts, or they're not well versed in them. That's just my own bias. When I smell them, there's just something that smells like they don't know what they're doing, but they're doing it anyways, and they're somehow releasing this anyhow, and they're getting a following from it, and it just makes they're just able to make it viable, if that makes sense.
And actually, I would say our good buddy Basic Morlock, I was bringing up Iron Duke. I think
Is that another one from
It's Iron
Beaufort?
Duke. Iron Duke is the kind of like horse saddle one, if I recall correctly. And if so, I thought that one was nice.
Well,
yeah,
let me
yeah.
go to Beaufort here.
But the one that brings up that was the most dissonant to me was Tenaire, which is the like sea battle one, which is
That's
like
the one.
Gunpowder and like Cologne bomb.
That smells ghastly. Oh my god. And it's not like I'm anti-cologne, but
it's just too much of it because it's like I'm fond of like dark salty aquatics, like a dark
I can appreciate that.
Sea spray, like that's a concept that's been done and I enjoy. It just felt like that wasn't what it did. It just took a gunpowder note that was very clearly articulated, wrapped it in some smoke, and then threw it on top of a tidal wave of Cologne, and it was kind of wild.
It is wild, but they're just it's kind of like, you know, in cooking with flavors. There's some flavors that you know, there's some reasons why those flavors don't come together, or they just don't gel very well, and they just don't please the palate. Once again, still subjective.
You don't like chorizo in your ice cream?
Well, that's what's kind of like what that Tenaire is. It's kind of like chorizo in your ice cream, kind of, you know, tuna chorizo in your ice cream. And then this other, the biscuit one, I looked it up, Lignum Vitae. And this is another one with those fucking C notes juxtaposed with all of this other stuff going on. It's supposed to be salty and sandy, but it also has this, you know, sweet, dulce de leche biscuity kind of thing going on, and it's just so cacophonous, and for some reason those disparate elements make it smell kind of vomity, and who wants to smell like vomit? Do you?
No, I don't know that I spent enough time with it to get
it's like baby vomit though, like if a baby's like gnawing on one of those like Zwieback cookie things that look like biscotti, and they're like, they had a little too much of it. Yeah.
So
I should do a review, and that should be like my frame of reference, like baby vomit. Just like the other one was halitosis and swamp ass. I should do that because people have told me I need to write more negative reviews. I write too many positive ones.
There you go. I do struggle with like baby sick style notes. That's why I don't like Invasion Barbar as much as most people love Invasion.
I'm not a really big fan of that one. I like, and I don't even know if you're a big fan of it, but the Histoire de Parfum, that I feel like it's similar to it, but it doesn't have that as much. It's kind of, it doesn't have that presence as much. I like that one. It's about as sweet as I would get for a Fougere kind of scent.
Yeah. I like 1725. It was just a little bit on the sweeter end for what I like in a Fougere style. It really tilts more in that gourmand direction. So I had one of the small vials. I think they had the big bottles that were like, what were they, like 25 mil, 15 mil, something like that, where you get a nice tall and beautiful presentation on them, like kind of like smaller size. I had one of those for 1725, and then eventually just swapped it because I just wasn't wearing it that much.
Right.
I don't know. At some point, I have to do a video about my journey with Fougeres, because like I went Fougere crazy, and then I kind of like, I don't know. I'm kind of over Fougeres.
Oh, well, I never reported back to everybody about the fragrances that I had the first three impressions on. Speaking of Fougeres, because one of them, the Fatal Fougere.
I will say to the benefit of the audience, Darren Allen is in the chat, and I am very excited to try the Dorian Fougere, and I have a sample on the way, and I am very excited for that. The note listing for that is fascinating with the hawthorn and everything. Very excited about it.
Ooh, that has hawthorn too. You know, I love my hawthorn.
Yes.
You know, I
try that. It doesn't seem like it's going to be. It seems like that's a very promising release.
I think that hawthorn is the wave of the future for perfume. We're going to see more people who are appreciating the hawthorn blossoms of May in fragrance. Fatal Fougere, though, yeah, aptly named. It's just like I'm sorry, I don't even know anything about this house, Aromas de Salazar. Somebody sent me a bunch of samples. They're like, this might be a house that you'd be interested in, and this is the first one that I tried. But it started off very grassy, like I was saying, almost too forcefully green, like not really a balanced green. And then somewhere along the line, it turned into mildew, like a very mildewy, strange, not mildew in a good way either, because there can be good mildew. I can get in a little fusty musty in a dry down, but this is just, yeah, I don't know. So Fatal Fougere, that was a fatality. And then Cornelin, I really like Anatole Le Breton. He's a very kind gentleman too, and I loved Bois Lumiere. I love the L'Eau de Marzen so far. This is quite nice. I don't think I would go full bottle, but look at how generous the sample is. Look at this. I don't need to, because that's a good amount.
It'll take, with your collection, you won't go through that.
I won't go through anything. So hey, I'm not going to go full bottle. Thanks, Anatole. This is good enough for me. I think I'll do a proper review of it, because I think it's quite lovely. It's a little bit more feminine than I tend to lean toward. Although, there have been exceptions to that. And then the Whale Porum is I love it. I think it's nice. I mean, I probably already have like enough fragrances like this, but hey, this is also a generous sample
I've heard
too.
great things about that. So
Whale Porum. And then there's also, some people get it confused with Worth Porum, which is in a similar, two different, designer houses released the fragrance about the same year, 1980. But this is nice. This, I'm trying to think of what it reminds me of in the dry down. Oh, I love the dry down. This would be good for folks who appreciate maybe like Charles Jourdan or Azzaro, maybe Equipage. It's great. I like it. I don't know if I'll go full bottle because it's kind of expensive. So those are the three impressions. I think out of the three, the one that won, even though Cornelin would be a very close second, would be the Whale Porum. Hesperidic. Yes. Anatole, really cool and interesting frags. I do have to try some more. I want to try Square Root, which, what is it in French? Racine Carotte. I want to try that one. It's actually, I think it's kind of clever on the label. It's just a actual square root symbol with his name, which is Fusty Musty. Great frag channel. The Yellow Floral Chypre. Wait, who is doing a yellow floral?
Darren Allen.
Oh, he is.
Yeah, we talked about it.
I remember. Well, my job is killing me, man. It's making my brain fried. Yeah, I remember now. It was Darren who was talking about that, and yeah, I love my yellow florals.
And you were super pumped. That's why I'm surprised it slipped your mind. You were so excited.
Going senile, man. Just like, I don't know what's going on. No, I was super pumped, and I will be super pumped, and I'd love to try that. Yeah. That's awesome. So it's about 9:32, folks. We got 25 people on. This has been a great showing, a great audience. Donna was an absolute joy and pleasure to. I love conversations like that. I think that we need more of them in these forums. So there will be more to come. And then Adam, always a pleasure. Great contributor as well. And Ryan, of course, you're my pal. Mm-hmm. So let's go backstage chat a little bit, and we're going to sign off for now. Next week, we're going to have, I'm going to look at the schedule. See, I'm telling you, this is a crying shame. I got to look at the schedule. Oh, James Elliott, who is based in Seattle, Filigree Shadow. He's going to be joining us. Yeah. And following that, February 21st, Kitschy K. Then we got Daily Beauty and Martial's Blends. February 28th, Scented Moments on March 7th, Gabe Oppenheim on March 14th, and for the scent of it, another independent perfumer who's going to be joining us. That will be on March 21st. I am discussing with Christophe Ladamiel. He is talking with me about setting a date, hopefully sometime in March or April. So stay tuned for that. Well, I'm going to sign off for now. Well, I never even included the music. That will just be 2 minutes of us trying to fill in space. So we won't do the theme music on our outro. We're going to sign off. Everybody take care. We'll see you soon.